Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Stephen King podcast. This is episode number 74, and I'm here with my co-host as usual, Hans. How you doing, Hans?
Hello. I'm fine. Summer is here, and I'm happy.
Yes, we are all happy about summer. So this episode, we're going to be doing the news as usual, plus a review of the It miniseries. And before we do that, I just want to make an apology to the listeners who might have wondered why the last podcast episode was so short. It's all my fault because we had an awesome interview with Robin Firth and I lost the file somehow. So it's pretty embarrassing. Fortunately, Hans is still talking to me, and
yes.
So is Robin, and she agreed to come back on after the Dark Tower movie has premiered, and we will redo that interview for you all because she's pretty fantastic, and I feel really bad about it. My only excuse is I was doing the audio and the video podcast at the same time, and I mixed up my file somehow, and I guess I deleted it because I don't like a cluttered PC desktop, so I accidentally deleted it along with that, and I tried to recover them, but I couldn't find them, so I'm left with egg on my face and a short podcast that went up last time.
Yeah, well, I think we're doing pretty good anyway. I mean, that's the first time that's happened in over 70 episodes, so yeah. I don't think we should be too hard on ourselves.
I just hate to do it when it's a special guest like that. That's all.
Yeah.
If it's you and me, so, it's a bummer, but when you invite somebody on and they take the time to do it, it's pretty embarrassing. Yeah. But be that as it may, we are still here, and Hans is still talking to me, and yes, let's get on with the news.
Welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the DeathRoom.
Yes, and first out in the news is something that's quite interesting. Over at the Universal Studios, the theme park, they every Halloween have a special. At night, they turn the entire theme park into a horror place with several haunted houses that have different themes. And the whole park is filled with everything from zombies to nasty clowns to everything. And I had the fortune to be there in 2012 to attend this. And I think that might have been the first time they did it. I can't remember exactly, but it was extremely cool. And I went to, I think there were like 12 haunted houses and zombies in the street and people with chainsaws. And so that is extremely fun to go to if you like horror. I enjoyed it and would love to go again. But the news this time is that this year they are having a The Shining themed horror house or haunted house. And this is based on the Stanley Kubrick movie. So it's not really the Stephen King Shining that we know and love, but it's from the movie, and they haven't revealed a lot. There is a short trailer on it up online, but that basically show clips from the movie. So my guess is that somehow they will incorporate those scenes into this haunted house. And if it's half as impressive as it was when I was there, this will definitely be something to visit this fall.
Yeah, it would definitely be very cool to go to that. It's going to be in Orlando, I guess. This at the Orlando's Universal Resort. I guess the thing is that I'm thinking about is even though they're basing it on the Kubrick movie, how much of that version of The Shining can you use to flesh out a a ride that's actually worth going through. I hope that they're not going to fill it with extra things to pad out the ride or something like that, and that they do keep it on The Shining. So I don't know if they're going to do like the maze and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I think they're going to do the maze and the Twin Girls and Halloran and the festivities, and I think they can pull a lot of stuff. The elevators, Running Blood, I think they will incorporate that in some way. And
I'll have to have the Here's Johnny Dorsey.
And the fun thing is that when I was there was something called the Alice Cooper House of Horror or something like that. And when you came in there, they had dimmed the light in some way, so you almost saw in black and white. You couldn't make out all the colors. And when you came into one room, there was someone stabbing someone, and when they ripped out the knife, they squished out what looked like blood, but of course it was only water that hit the audience, and you could really feel it. And since they had managed to get the feeling that you saw everything in black and white, you didn't see that it was water. You just saw something coming flying to you and hitting you. And so I mean, I can't even describe it with something else. I haven't experienced anything that's this visual and really well performed. So I'm sure that this will be a really cool thing to visit.
Oh, that sounds really cool. I remember once at Disney World, we went on I don't think it was Alien, but it was kind of based on that. And you were like on a spaceship, and then there was like a grade above you, and there was like another level on top of you. And then there was supposed to be, and again, it was like you couldn't see clearly, and it was like strobing lights. But then somebody was up there, and then they were yelling that there's a creature here, help me. And then all of a sudden you hear this clunking, and then you hear the creature grabbing the guy, and then all this liquid sprays over you, and then it's supposed to be like the blood of the person or something like that. Yeah. So that's kind of the same idea. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's it freaks you out. So that kind of stuff is pretty clever. That sounds like a lot of fun. So hopefully they'll be doing that similar effects tricks with this Shining ride. That would be fun to experience for sure.
Yep. Hopefully someone will attend it and can tell us all about it.
Yes, for sure. So any of you people going to Orlando, let us know.
Yep.
All right. Turning to TV, we have another featurette that was posted on the web from the upcoming Mist TV series, and it's Behind the Mist. And this is a series that's coming on Spike TV. And you can see the link up on Han's site. It's a May 22nd article. It looks very interesting. I think the only thing that gets me a little worried is how many people were in the cast. It seems like quite a large cast, especially the shots that were in the mall. And I'm just hoping it's not going to be those, because I just have flashbacks to those under the dome scenes when the extras are standing around, and whether they're in the coffee shop or on the main street and stuff like that. So it's that trick of where you're introduced to a set of characters, and maybe one of them gets killed off, and then they're going to pull somebody from the crowd that you're going, well, where was this person all this time while all this other stuff was going on? So
yeah.
That aspect of it has, and maybe it's unfair, but I still have Under the Dome After Effects, so that I think that just, otherwise I probably wouldn't even have clued into that in the trailer, but that was still there for me. And the rest of the stuff looks interesting, the special effects and whatnot. I'm still a little leery about the idea that the Mist is like intelligent. I hope that's not what they're doing, but it seems that direction that they're going in. So yeah, that's there's a lot of things in there. Generally, the quality of it looks good, which is, I guess, the main thing in the end.
Yeah, well, I've been fortunate to watch the pilot. Yep. And while I can't really say anything about it yet, I have a short review that's spoiler-free posted on my site. And I think that what's important to remember here is that this one shouldn't be seen as a direct adaptation of King's story, because it's not. And I think that's important to have in mind when you watch this one, because if you think that it's going to be the same story that's told in the book and in the movie from Frank Darabont, you will probably be disappointed, because it's not the same story they are telling, and it's not the same characters that we see here. So this is more like if the movie happened in one side of town, this happened in the other side of the town, if that's makes any sense. So there are different characters, but they are in the same place, and they are exposed to the same mist that we saw there. So keep that in mind. And I must say, I think it's an interesting show, and so far from what I've seen, it looks promising, and I have high hopes for it.
Can you say in general, did it feel like a horror show, or more of a suspense show, or a bit of both? Or
well, I would say a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely not a pure horror show.
Right.
It's, as you mentioned, there are a lot of characters, but there are a few that are our main characters in the show. And I mean, since this happened and in a town, and they are at the mall where there usually are quite a lot of people, and even more so now that this is happening. So of course there's going to be a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But there is a core of main characters that isn't too many.
Right.
I mean, there's not so many that you can't keep track of them.
Right. And how did you find the acting in general?
In general, I think they are pulling it off.
Okay, good.
It's hard to say. Some of the characters we only see a little of, and some we see more of. So it's hard to say after just one episode.
Yeah.
I usually have a rule that before you judge a show, you have to see at least 4 episodes.
Right. Yeah.
To get in the feel of it, and then learn to know the characters and everything like that. So, but after one episode, I'm hopeful for it.
That's good.
And I enjoyed it, the first episode. But I think if you expect a true adaptation of King's Story or something similar, or a remake of the movie, then you're way off. Because that is not what we're getting here. I mean, I think you should more see it like something like Haven, where they take the inspiration and the starting point from King's Story, and it's set in the same kind of universe and the same town in this case. But it's not the same characters that's in the story.
Yeah, I mean, I've already had to recalibrate my expectations because I wanted them to do like the continuing on the road, that where the novella left off type of. Yeah. And that doesn't seem like it's going to happen either. One other question: does it have a sense of humor, or is it just deadly serious for that whole pilot?
Yeah, I would say that it's more serious than humor.
Okay. Because that's something that I think that's important in any project, is to be able to not, or even if it's organically, to work in a little bit of humor from time to time. So hopefully they're not going to be constantly trying to dial it up to 11 all the time. But we'll have to see. Yeah.
Again, this is just the first episode, so we'll have to give them a little chance to establish everything.
Right.
It's always hard to say after one episode, but yeah.
Okay. I don't. Did you want to? I don't know if you want to talk about this episode or save it for the next one. You got a press kit for it.
Yeah. I got a really cool press kit for it.
Yeah, I saw the pictures. Sweet.
Yeah, it's like a book with great pictures from the show and some text about the characters and a little bit about the show. And there's an intro from Christian Thorpe, the showrunner, and there's also a smaller booklet where you have the pilot on the DVD, and you have photos from the show and stuff like that. A lot of info about the show.
Cool.
So it's a great press kit.
Yeah, it's black, right? Like or is it?
Yeah, gray black.
Gray black. Yeah. So check out the pictures on Han's site. It's a pretty cool looking kit.
Yeah.
All right. Up next is Mr. Mercedes,
and 2 weeks ago, we learned that the show, or the filming of the show, would wrap in 2 weeks. So that would make it a wrap today, actually, or yesterday maybe, since today we're recording this is a Saturday. So that's very interesting. And the series will premiere in August 9.
Wow.
So that's really fast. I mean, the first thing we heard was in 2008, and then 2018. And then it was late 2017, and now we're in the end of late summer. So that's promising.
Yeah.
And there's also been a lot of photos coming out from different places. We have some of the characters. We have some of different characters. What's his name? Brady.
Yeah.
In his ice cream truck.
Yeah.
And I think he looks really good. I think most of the cast looks really good in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And we also get in the New York Times, I think it was, they said that this was one of the shows that you had to see this summer. So it seems like they have actually seen something of it, because I'm going to see here, based on its first 2 episodes, this dramatization, blah, 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 is the Stephen King adaptation to watch this summer. So it sounds like they have seen the first 2 episodes of this one. And
cool.
Gives it a thumbs up, so that's good.
Yeah.
And we've seen pictures of Bill and Holly, Brady and the young Brady, and a lot of cool pictures flooding the net right now. And we also know that 4 of the episodes, and I got confirmation that it's episode 4, 6, 7, and 10, that's written by Dennis Lehane.
All right.
Hope that's how we pronounce it.
I think it's Lehane.
Lehane, okay. Who wrote for shows like Boardwalk Empire. I don't know if you watched that.
Yeah.
I really like that show. And The Wire. So that's giving you an example of what to expect from this upcoming Mr. Mercedes. So it sounds very promising, and we're only about 2 months away from it being airing. So head over and check out those pictures.
Yeah, it's interesting. What was it? August 9th is when it's going to start airing? That's right around the same.
Yep.
That's the same week as Dark Tower movie comes out. So it's going to be a busy month.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like the pictures of especially Harry Treadaway with the actor that's playing him. Harry Treadaway is playing the villain of the Mr. Mercedes series. He looks really good. I really liked him from, as I mentioned before, from Penny Dreadful. So I think the combination of him and Brendan Gleeson that's a pretty powerful 1-2 combo for this series. And the hero is only as good as his villain. And I think that both of these actors will push each other, even though they won't really see each other right away, I don't believe. I really like the poster for that A&T and Spike has got is with a really angry, happy face, which looks like a bullet hole on the lead character's forehead right between his eyes. And it's a pretty amazing how makeup can change an actor, because I think everybody, when they announced the actor that's playing Holly, that she was too pretty, but if you see her with her hair colored in that, she looks like a totally different person. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Very excited for this series. I think it's going to be one of the pleasant surprises, and hopefully Gerald's Game will be a pleasant surprise. Yeah. Yeah. And we can also mention that since there was this terror attack in Manchester, who has somewhat similarities with what happened in Mr. Mercedes. Yeah. A lot of people were worried that this show would be postponed because of that, but we haven't heard any indication that will happen. So it's rolling on as planned as it looks now. Alrighty, turning back to books, but not a Stephen King book per se, but a book about Stephen King, and specifically a book about the Dark Tower. And this one is one of these promotional tie-in books, and to do with the art of the film. And the cover is very striking, as it shows the tower poking through I'm assuming it's clouds. Yeah, it's not water, so. Right? No, I don't think so. I think it's clouds. Yeah, which is it's actually a pretty striking picture. So I don't know if this is something that maybe this is just concept art for the movie, but I don't normally get too into the media books, especially because if you're into Star Wars or stuff like that, you can go crazy with this stuff. I did buy one or two for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, so definitely the Dark Tower is something that I'm interested in more than enough to get this book. And Hans has a good write-up on his site, again on May 22nd. That must have been a busy day for you. Yep. We have a description of the book from Daniel Wallace is the author. He's done quite a few promotional tie-in books for Star Wars and various other series. And this book looks like it's broken into 5 parts. Part 1 is the path to the Dark Tower. Part 2 is the gunslinger and the man in black profiles. Part 3 is focused on Midworld, the journey through the wasteland that it makes up that world. Part 4 is Keystone World, which is Earth, but it also is the world is rocked by quakes and stretched thin by interdimensional stress. And part 5 is the Dark Tower, which is a wrap-up of the section that collects insights from the major players, their favorite memories, and looking back on the journey that led to them to this point. So it sounds like a pretty exhaustive book. I'm hoping it's going to be of a fair size, not just in length, but in dimensions. I guess it would be asking too much for it to be the same size like as the Art of Darkness, but I'm sure it'll be bigger it'll be a coffee table sized book to give some of these drawings proper justice. And what we saw in the trailer, let me ask you first, Tom, what are you excited about this book? Yes, I am, and both because I think that judged from the cover, this would have a lot of great photos or drawing or whatever it is in it. So I think we will like that. But I also like the part 5 where they actually have, I guess, a couple of interviews or something like that with the people involved with this movie. And I hope that will be like some kind of behind the scenes stuff where you get some insight till, as you said here, how they ended up being in this movie, how this happened and stuff like that. So I think this will be an interesting book. Yes. Yeah. Especially based on the trailer, which when we discussed it, both on the video and audio chats, is we were very impressed with the apparent scope of the movie. It just seems like there's a lot more in there than we thought there was going to be. So it should be interesting to see how much of the book captures that. I'm just hoping that the interviews that you mentioned are more than just promotional media powder puff pieces and actually a little more in depth. But we'll have to see about that. But yeah, this is exciting. I've already got my pre-order in, so hopefully this. I don't know. I don't really want to get it before the movie comes out, but I have a feeling that that's probably what's going to happen. And knowing you with your connections, Hans, you'll probably have it way before the movie comes out anyhow. So
hopefully. Well, I think the release date is actually before the movie. So yeah, this will be out before the movie. But you can always put it in a safety box and not read it.
I'll have to give it to my wife and say, just go hide this.
Yeah, hide this for me. Okay, next up is something I think is quite interesting or exciting, and that is that Stephen and Owen are going on a book tour for Sleeping Beauties. And I think it's interesting and will be interesting to see what they will do. Usually on these events, Stephen is alone on stage. Now his son is with him, and it will be interesting to see how they do this, if they will be like an interview with each other, if they will talk to each other, if they will just split the time and talk half of the time each, and what and how and everything like that. So I think that's quite interesting settings to see how that happens. And this tour will start in New York City on September 26th and end in Florida on October 6th. So there's total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stops for the tour during that time. It's almost every day. There's some days in between where they get a breather. And so far we don't know any more than the cities. We don't know what venues they're going to be in. We don't know if there's going to be a signing event at this event or if there will be pre-signed books as have been in the latest book tours. So my guess, though, is that there will be pre-signed books, because with a packed schedule like this, I don't think they can manage to sign, say, 400 books each night. I think they can't possibly do that. So my guess is that maybe 1, maybe 2 of these events could contain a signing, but the others will have pre-signed books that are given away. When you buy the book, there will be usually there has been like 400 signed, and you don't know if you're going to get signed or not. That you just get a book and open it and see if you were lucky or not. So, but that's interesting. And one of the stops is actually in Canada. Mm-hmm. Are you going?
No, unfortunately, I don't live there in that area anymore. I saw him the other 2 times he came to Toronto, but that's just too far for me to go. That's like a 4-hour.
How far are you from
4-hour flight.
4-hour flight. Okay.
Yeah. So unfortunately not. I probably could get to, if I went, go with Missoula. Is it Missoula? I think that's Montana. That's directly south of me. I don't know how long that would take. I can probably look that up. That would probably be my best chance of going. Yeah, where's Missoula? City of Montana. So if I were going to go anywhere to see him, that would probably be it. Though I could fly to Toronto and stay at my brother's place, but again, it's hard to justify a trip like that when if I'm the only one going, the rest of my family's staying at home. So that's never.
Family wouldn't want to go anyway.
No, well, they would go back to see family, but because all our family is back in that area, right? So.
Yeah, you could just tell your wife that, oh, honey, shouldn't we go and visit the family?
Yeah.
And then when you're there,
say it's like, let's go back to Ontario for Thanksgiving, because that's our same month as Thanksgiving for us. So.
Yeah, and then oh man, Stephen King is here.
What a coincidence!
Yeah, what coincidence! Better not let her listen to this podcast now.
Yeah. Just to follow up on your point, it'll be interesting to see how they, like you said, how they manage these. Will it be, because usually when they do these kind of things, there's a host that asks questions. I wonder if it'll just be Stephen and Owen on the stage asking each other questions.
Yeah.
But that'll be interesting to see. Maybe Joe Hill will pop up and be the guest host or something like that.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That would be fun. Yeah.
I don't know where he lives. If he lives in one of those cities that they are visiting. Maybe he could pop in and say hi.
Well, he could be visiting his parents in Florida, right, on the last stop, and pop in then.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see. Anyhow, if you're in those any of those cities, check it out, because you just don't know how many more of these book tours that Stephen King will be doing. And even though this one's pretty well localized, mostly to the East Coast area, hopefully some of our listeners will get out and fire back some comments or audio summaries of what they saw when they went there.
Yeah, and as it looks now, he will not be coming to Europe for this book tour.
No surprise there.
No, I was hoping that maybe that would happen, since Owen is with him, and to give Owen a push for the European audience.
Right.
I mean, if he doesn't like to travel, I mean, it should definitely be easier to travel if you have your son with you. So I for a while hoped that might convince him to come over here again. But as far as now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No.
I guess we're going to have to wait until the next time he comes here. You never know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up next is, well, this is old news, but Gwendy's Button Box is out, and that was on May 16th. It was released early. And Hans, you had a contest for that?
Yeah, I had a contest for that, but that ended on the 16th, so that's one over.
Okay.
But the book was released on the 16th, and originally it was supposed to be released on May 30th.
Right.
Which is like 3 days from now. But I guess it was finished at the printer earlier, so it was released on the 16th. And so far, I have only heard good things about it, which is good. The worst thing I've heard about it is that someone said, "Oh, it's too bad it's not a horror story, but it's good anyway." And I mean, if that's the worst thing someone says about your book, you're going to be happy about it, I think. And it was climbing on the charts as well. I think it was actually, I think it landed on number 1 on Amazon just a couple of days ago or something like that. So
cool. Yes, I think
it's selling well, and it's definitely a good book. I liked it. It's short for being a Stephen King book. Compared, I think it was about 168 or 67 pages or something like that. So it's a short book, but it's a good book. I liked it.
Cool. I'm still waiting to read it. I opted out of the regular version and went for that Nocturnal Special Edition, Nocturnal Box Special Edition, which doesn't come out till June. So.
Yeah.
But hopefully I'll have it read for the next podcast. I'm hoping that, because I'm looking at the cover for the regular edition, it says it includes bonus story, The Music Room, which we reviewed on the earlier podcast. I hope that's included in the Nocturnal Box edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be.
I don't think it will be. I think it will be a regular book there. I think it's only on the audio edition that story is in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry. My bad. I didn't read that clearly. Yeah. So, and I remember Cemetery Dance tweeting that it was their first #1 book. So, so that was correct when you made that statement. So that's good. Congratulations for them, and must be quite the rush for Richard Chismar, the editor of Cemetery Dance and publisher-in-chief owner of Cemetery Dance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a #1 book written with Stephen King?
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of Cemetery Dance, they have also released a new a new illustration for their edition of Sleeping Beauties. And there seems to be a lot of moth in this book, because this new picture shows a lot of moth. Well, we don't really know how they will play into the story, but they will be there, and we will probably never look at them the same way we do before we read a book.
Yeah, I'm really getting that Silence of the Lambs vibe from it. So there's obviously some sort of metamorphosis theme for the women of the world in play, I would imagine. Which also reminds me, I don't know if you ever read Swan Song by Robert McCammon, which has something about with people getting masks that grow over their face, and then later on, the spoiler, they hatch open and it reveals your true inner face. So
okay.
This is very interesting. So I'm assuming this is some sort of evolutionary step for women in the human race in general. So I'm really looking forward to this book. There's just so many exciting things coming out this year that it's.
Yeah. Definitely.
When we were talking at our wrap-up of 2016 and preview of 2017, I don't think we realized how much was coming out this year. But Stephen King is really hot this year for whatever reason. It's just the timing of a lot of things too, I guess. But man, oh man, this is going to be a pretty fantastic year.
Good year to be a King fan.
Absolutely, absolutely.
next year we're going to say, oh, why is nothing happening? Because we've been spoiled this year.
Yeah, we'll be biting our nails wondering if we're going to get the sequels to the Dark Tower movie and the It movie.
Yeah.
And I heard that the director, Andrew Machete, has been tapped to direct a Justice League Dark movie. So that kind of has me wondering about what's going to happen to who's going to direct if there's going to be the one sequel to It. So...
Yeah. Well, maybe he managed to do that movie before the new It, because I think they're going to wait until premieres in the beginning of September, and then they're going to write the script, and then they might not even start filming it until early next year.
Yeah.
Something like that. So that might give him time to do that movie in between.
Yeah. Alrighty. So that is the news.
Yes.
And you want to kick off our next segment?
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around, pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the night shift.
Yes, we are going to talk about It. And this time we're going to talk about the old It, if you want to call it that.
The original It.
The original It, that's a better word for it. Yeah. We're going to talk about the miniseries from 1990 that aired on ABC in 2 parts. Each part was about an hour and a half without commercial. And before we start talking about that, and before I forget it, I just want to mention that the same people who did the Pet Sematary documentary that we reviewed and interviewed here are doing a documentary about this version of It called Pennywise, the Story of It documentary. And they are seeking funds for it. And I have no doubt that they will get the funds that they are asking for, because they are almost have it already. They have had this Indigo thing going for I think 5 or 6 days.
Right.
And they have 25 days left, and they have already reached 75% of their goal.
Oh, fantastic.
20,000 pounds. So this is going to happen. I'm quite sure of that. The only question now is if everyone who wants to invest in this one is going to be able to do it, because once the month is over, this will go down, and you can donate a different amount of money. But if you donate like £25, you get the DVD. 30, you get Blu-ray. 40, you get a DVD and T-shirt, and so on and so on. And you can get a signed poster and stuff like that. So, and I'm guessing that those of us who give here will get the stuff a little bit earlier than those who buy it in the regular stores. So if you're eager to get this, go over to their site and support them. Not only will you help them do the movie, you will probably get your stuff earlier than if you're going to buy it in the stores.
Right.
So everybody wins on it.
Yes, and we were both very impressed with their Pet Sematary documentary. And even though they didn't have the funds to get the rights to any of the clips from the movie, for myself, I actually prefer that. And I think you did too, Hans, because a lot of these documentaries just had out the running time with clips from the movie, which... We already have the movie. We don't need to see the movie in the documentary. We want you to talk about the movie, and that's what they did with that one. And I really enjoyed that approach. I don't know if they're raising this funds because they want to be able to show clips from the miniseries, and if they are, I can understand that because that's the more standard way of doing it. But they have an opportunity to make it signature trademark that they just talk about talk to the people behind the scenes instead of showing us clips from the movie. And I don't know what direction they're going to take it in, but I understand that don't quote me on this, but I think it's pretty sure that they have an interview with Tim Curry as part of the...
Yes, they have.
Yeah, and it's going to be like, they're aiming for 4 hours of content, I believe, too. Is that correct?
Yes. They're aiming for 4 hours of content, and they have over 20 interviews booked so far, including Tim Curry, which is, he's a must if you do this.
Yeah.
And they have from Bart Mixon, who is the special effects guy, who was the special effects guy on this movie, they have managed to get over 2 hours of never before seen footage. So that should definitely be, and we've seen some photos from this popping up on the internet, and there's a lot of pictures of the creation of the look of Pennywise, how he was going to look, what he was going to wear, and everything like that. So this is going to be a great, and I don't think they need to fill it. I think they can go for 4 hours with this behind the scenes footage, interviews and stuff like that. So I think that even if they will include some clips just to illustrate their points in the interviews and stuff like that. I think we won't see too much from the movie in this.
Yeah, I hope not.
I think they will have enough to fill it with anyway. So
yeah.
I think this one will be super good.
Yeah, it's always funny when and we went through the same thing when we did like the trailer breakdown for it in the Dark Tower. It's like people say, how can you talk for an hour about a half a minute trailer? But so like 4 hours might seem a little like, how can you make 4 hours about a 3 hour movie? But it's not really that hard once you start talking about it and getting multiple viewpoints about the same piece of information that you're talking about. So 4 hours sounds like a nice, decent length for this miniseries. And I'm definitely looking forward to it, especially because I thought they did such a great, exhaustive job with Pet Sematary.
Yeah, I think that if anyone should pull this off, it should be them. So I'm hopeful for this one, and I believe it will be out sometime next year, maybe something like that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something to look forward for next year already.
Yeah.
Okay, and back to the It miniseries. This one aired on ABC, as I mentioned, in 2 parts. It aired on November 18th and November 20 in 1990. When I watched this, I had a older Swedish DVD version of it, which is actually one of those DVDs that you have to flip over, like you did with the old LP records.
Yep, same here.
And you had one episode on each side. So I decided to actually not see it in one sitting. I saw the first part one night, and then I think I skipped one night and saw the other one the night after that. So I really made a point of watching it as you would have done when it was aired on TV.
Right.
I must say that it wasn't as scary as I had remembered it, but I still liked it a lot. Some of the acting was a little bit over the top, maybe.
Yeah.
The ending was
rushed.
The climax was unfortunately as bad as I remembered it.
Yeah, probably even worse now.
yeah. But I was most curious to how I would react to Tim Curry as Pennywise.
Yep.
With all the talk, and you had these pre-expectations of him. And I think that he's a great Pennywise. He is not as scary as I remembered him. And frankly, I think he had more of a humorous side than a really scary side. And this is almost, 30 years ago? Almost 20. It's actually 27 years ago. So that's very...
Mm-hmm. How apropos.
Yeah. And I mean, they are doing this where he opens his mouth and shows his fangs, and he opens his mouth, and then the picture is fading into black. And that reminded me almost of how they did Salem Slot back in 1978 or 79 when that was done. They didn't really show that much gore and blood in this. So I still enjoyed it a lot, and some things were almost as I remember them, and some of the things, unfortunately, was not as good as I remember them. What was your initial feelings?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched this, so and I haven't read the book for a long time either, and I'm rereading it now, and I'm about halfway through the book. So it was interesting watching this miniseries version of it. And like you, I have a DVD, the DVD version. I think it was released in 2009, and it's a flipper. But this version was reformatted from TV for widescreen. So what they did is they basically, it's not pan and scan, it's called matted. So what happens is they cut the top and the bottom off the picture to make it a rectangle, to take it from a square. And what that does basically is it zooms in the picture, but it also it cuts out information that you would get normally at the top and the bottom. So when I was watching it, it felt very tight, like it's and TV in general, especially back and even 20 years ago, when a lot of people had square TVs as opposed to widescreen, there's that really tight feeling that you get with shots. So, and especially in the movie where your main cast of characters, like there's 7 characters. So anytime there was like a group scene with them, it felt really claustrophobic to me. So I was constantly thinking to myself, man, this really needs to be in a movie because, it was shot on TV for the 4:3 screen. So everything feels really tight. It loses that widescreen cinema movie feel to it, which makes sense because it was done for TV. And the color palette of the everything looks dull. All the interiors look very 90-ish TV studio soap opera look to them, even though they did exterior shots and that. But I've got a lot of thoughts to go through, and we'll try to break it down a little bit. But overall, I did enjoy it. It's a 90s. It's definitely a product of the 90s, so some parts dragged a little bit for me. Some of the acting was stiff. And we can get into that a bit more when we talk about the two different eras. I think Tim Curry definitely does a memorable performance as Pennywise, but I do think, because if you just haven't seen the series and you read on the internet, and unfortunately the internet is either people love something 100% or they hate it 100%. And there's not very much middle ground. So everybody, to me, by the time I saw his performance again, I was a little underwhelmed. And I think, like you said, he was more comedic than horrific. And I think that's tied into, obviously, to the restrictions that a TV production can place on him. But he definitely is the standout performance from the miniseries. But sometimes I thought he was a little too over the top as well. So, and I don't buy the argument that people say his performance as Pennywise will never be bested. I don't agree with that at all. I think in a more modern interpretation, with the shackles freed in terms of what you can show, I think that I would not be surprised if Bill Skarsgård's performance of Pennywise would make people have to reevaluate their feelings about Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise. So, and that might be a controversial statement, and I'm curious to hear what listeners would think about that position, because I think that if you think back to, say, like The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger as the Joker, I don't think anybody before that would have said that previous interpretations or Jack Nicholson or Cesar Romero from the 60s TV show, people never thought those performances would be bested either. But I'm not going to be surprised if I end up liking the new movie version of Pennywise more than I do of Tim Curry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you about that. I am positive that I would like that version of Pennywise better, but we also have to take in consideration it's a bit unfair to compare these two Pennywises, really, because
absolutely, but it happens.
As we it's you can't not do it, because they are the two Pennywises. But I think that if you go back to 1990, what we see when these fangs and the image freezes and not so much gore and stuff like that, and I think that was really scary at the time. And
especially if you saw it when you were a kid. Yeah,
definitely. And these are very typical for movies and special effects, that once they come out, they are really scary and you remember them. And then, like now, 27 years later, we get it again with new technology. We can show more. This is a movie, not a TV show. So, I mean, it's not fair to compare those two, because it's almost like comparing apples and pears. It's not the same. They didn't have the same chances when this aired in 1990. So I think that Pennywise is definitely the best character in this miniseries, and Tim Curry is definitely the one who survives the best, I think. He is definitely my high point of this movie. And when it comes to the others, I actually think that the kid version of the Losers Club is doing a much better job than the grown-ups. They are more believable, and I felt a little bit that the grown-ups were overplaying it a little bit, and I don't know if that was or is because that they have aged badly from the 90s to now. I mean, Bill has a long hair and a ponytail and stuff like that. They look a little bit dorky, I think, and I don't know. It's just they don't feel that believable. It's easier with the kids. It's in the 50s. It's not that. I don't know. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but I think the kids were better than the adults, actually.
That's interesting. I agree with you that some of the performances were over the top, like Harry Anderson of Richie Chozier and Dennis Christopher as Eddie. I think they were a little over the top. I thought Annette Toole generally was pretty good. I think some of the directions that she was given maybe forced her to overplay certain scenes a little bit. I thought Richard Thomas in general was pretty good, but for me, the standout was John Ritter as Ben Hanscom. I thought he was the best of the adult characters, and Tim Reed too. But he had a pretty level character, whereas the other characters, some of them were much more over the top in their performances, I think. in general, the kids, I can't really agree with you from an acting standpoint. I thought most of them were pretty stiff, to be honest. I think the character that played the young Bill, Jonathan Brandis, who is no longer with us, I thought he was definitely the best out of the kid actors. I didn't really like Emily Perkins' portrayal of the young Beverly Marsh that much at all. So, but the part that really fell down for me was the kids that played the bad kids, like the Bowers, Belch, and I don't know who the other character was, but I thought they were pretty bad. And I forgot that it was back in that era, but the ducktail, greasy hair, that was just like really, to me, that was just like too overdone. So, but I do think the better part of the movie or the miniseries, and I think that's probably why they've done it the way they're doing it with the movie, is the kids' story is just more nostalgic. So, and kids being put in danger just automatically makes you more invested in the story with it. When they're adults, it's a little bit harder to feel the same level of intensity of fear for those characters. So I in general, and some of these actors all were at that time were hot commodities, mostly in TV. But in general, I thought John Ritter and Tim Reed probably had the best performances, and Richard Thomas wasn't too far behind. But I agree with you, the ponytail looks really dorky today, especially when you think of him as John Boy, or if you read the description of the character in the book, when he's an adult, he's basically bald. So
yeah,
so that kind of throws you off. So. Yeah, but man, I tell you, like Henry Bowers, that was just so over the top that every time he was on the screen, it took me out. Though I did like the adult version with Michael Cole, who, if anybody knows the Mod Squad, remembers that TV show, he was the one of the lead characters in that show. So I always get a kick out of seeing him. Unfortunately, his character didn't really get to do much as the adult version, which was too bad.
Yeah.
Seth Green, the young Seth Green, was pretty good, except I thought that his scene with the werewolf in the school basement was really hokey.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that holds this miniseries back. Like, I agree with you. Like, if you're 12 years old, I'm sure that they went through the same thing that I went through as a kid when I saw Salem's Lot, because I can look at it now as an adult and say that it doesn't really seem that scary, except I still think that scene at the window works quite well just because of the way it was filmed. And there's something just so unearthly about it. And that whatever the camera trick that they used for it really worked well. In this movie, though, unfortunately, in this day of special effects and that, they're just so bad or just so obvious that every time they happen, it just pulls you out of the movie. And that's a restriction of the technology and the fact that it was done as a TV show at the time. And unfortunately for this kind of story, because there's so much of that in your face, overt violence, you need to be able to believe that. So it's a constant battle of suspending your disbelief while you're watching this. And that's too bad, because you can still see, even though the story is hobbled by the technology and the standards of TV at that time, you can still feel underneath that, all of what you're seeing, that there's a really powerful story behind everything that you're getting in the miniseries.
Yeah, and I'm also rereading the book now for the September premiere of the new one, and I'm actually listening to Steven Weber read it, which I can definitely recommend if you want to listen to an audiobook, because he does a fantastic job with it. And I know that this is very nitpicking, but there's those small kind of things that they have changed for no good reason, really, that annoys me a little bit. They have it that it appears every 30 years instead of every 27 years. And they have changed some stuff around, like the library scene actually follows pretty good what happens in the book, but in the movie it is Richie was in the library, I think, and in the book I think it's Eddie. They have just switched character and stuff like that, so they've done quite a lot of those nitpicking changes that really doesn't matter and sometimes annoy me very much.
Does it matter to you or to the production of the show?
Yeah, but I think that, if King established that this happens every 27 years, why would you change it to every 30 years? Is it just because you're too lazy to calculate what 27 years is? Or why would you do it? It's such a small thing that really doesn't...
You sound like a real fan now, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But no, I think that if you do changes, I think you could do changes, because I see also that sometimes you have to be able to pull it off. But when you do changes like this, for the movie, it doesn't matter because they just say, oh, it happens every 30 years. Yeah. And then they calculate back 30 years in time when things happen. And they could just as easily have done 27 years and calculate that. Yeah. So there's really no reason, and it's something that us nitpicking geeks will pull up on. So that annoys me a little bit. But I was also surprised because when they are in this Chinese restaurant and they open their fortune cookies, and those things that pops out there looks pretty lame, I think. But as it happened, when I listened to the audiobook, I actually happened to come to that scene just a day or so after.
Okay.
Actually, they are following the book pretty well.
Yeah. It's just that the technology can't carry it off.
No, exactly. They couldn't really visualize it in the TV show, but they are actually following, and the eye and stuff like that actually happens in the book. So they are very, very, very good on following the book there, but the technology didn't be there. So I get hung up on stuff like that. So I that's just me. But overall, I think that it's also quite, as you said in the beginning, it's quite rushed. You feel that some of the things happens very, very fast, and I can understand that. I mean, they had 3 hours to go through this thick book. I mean, they probably couldn't have done it in a much different way unless having more time.
Yeah.
But that gives me hope for this new version, which at least rumor has it that the first movie is about 2.5 hours long. Yeah. If the other one is the same, that would mean that we will get about 5 hours instead of 3 hours, as we did this miniseries. And that gives me hope that they will have the time to not rush things as much as it's done in this.
I agree with you, because like if you look, like you said, it's split into 2 pieces. Each piece is about 90 minutes. So you compare 90 minutes to if this movie is going to be 2.5 hours. So I think it'll be probably 2:20 or 2:15. But that's like an extra half hour of time, and you can really flesh out things more because some of the relationships feel so rushed in this version. If anything, I think the kids' part should have really gone more beyond the first half. And I understand you have these big name stars that you want to use as the adults, but I just don't think that they fully mapped out all the kids, especially like Stanley and Mike Hanlon. We never got to see their encounters with it at all. And we never got to see the thing that I really noticed that was missing is, and because in the book it's described so cool, is the inside of the standpipe, right? With the stairs going up and that, like that whole... Yeah. I don't know if they're going to do that in the movie, but that whole thing, and they tried to recreate the Stanley's scene with him just going into some random house. Why there's a random house in a park, I don't know, but because in the standpipe, and then in the book he goes into the standpipe, and that's when the squishy guys start coming down the stairs, and that sequence is just so cool in the book, but in the movie it's like nothing, and they never really...
It sounds like very cheap.
Yeah, and they never really gave the silver I think the appropriate time either. We never got to hear it with the cards with in the spokes. Like that wasn't, again, this is a nitpicky thing, I guess, but it's part of the magic of that bike, right? Without it just felt like another bike. So I think the best scene that to me shows like how hobbled the story was, and because they followed it, like you said, so closely, was when Ben runs into Bowers and them for the first time, and they put him up against the fence, and he pulls out the knife, but then he never uses it. Like, and then he falls through the fence and that, but I don't, that's the scene where you have to establish how bad these guys really are. And I guess either because they just couldn't do it on TV or whatever, but where he carved his initial on his stomach, Ben's stomach. So there's all these moments when you go through the miniseries and they take it up to that one point, but then they just can't deliver like that piece that you need to really make the impact that scene needs. And that's what happens throughout the whole miniseries. The only scenes that really worked well were like probably the blood scenes with Beverly in her bathroom from that perspective. Yeah. So, but that one scene with, was it Eddie in the shower, and all the shower things start coming out of the wall, the pipes, like that was so stupid. Is that in the book? Because I don't remember. I haven't gotten that far if it is.
No, I haven't. Seen that.
So that was an invented sequence. And then that special effects sequence with Pennywise coming out of the drain was just like, it looked like something from one of those stop motion cartoons like Gumby and Pokey. I don't know if you're familiar with that series. Claymation, like yes, that's so bad. So when stuff like that happens, it just really takes you out of the moment. So,
but I have one scene that I almost turned it off when that came. Actually, can you guess what scene that was?
One scene that you almost turned. Would it be in the library?
Really cheesy one? No. Should I reveal it?
Are you talking about the spider at the end?
No.
No.
Yeah, that was really bad. But this was. This is what I'm thinking about is the scene where Mike and Bill is at Mike's house, and he takes out Silver. And they fix him up and go to the schoolyard. Then we get all these pictures of them riding the bike, and he sits on the saddle and put up his legs, and they ride over a swing, or what's it called?
Teeter-totter.
Yeah, and stuff like. And I was, oh man, what is this? It felt so cheesy. It was almost like a lovers couple out on a date or something like that.
Yeah, it would have just been better to show him ride that bike by himself and then flash back to when he was younger and show the spokes with the cards flipping and him going really fast and stuff like that.
I mean, they were there and they were scared like hell of this coming back to it and everything, and still they take time and ride that bike and it was just so that scene. I think they should have cut it all out. It didn't work at all for me.
Yeah, unfortunately not. I don't know if they ever are going to they do the sequel for this. Like I've just sort of got through that part in the book, but that reunion meal that the Losers Clubs get back together as adults in the Chinese restaurant, that is a really emotional read in the book, because they're basically their childhoods coming back to them, and anybody can relate to this that's grown up and remembers lost dreams, and just the fact that your body's not as physically capable generally as when you were younger or whatnot. So that's a really touching sequence, and it felt so TV-ish and again, maybe this is just because of this DVD was reformatted, but it was so tight. Like they could never fit all the characters on the screen at the same time, and they did that. They tried to, and I've read this from other directors too. The hardest thing to film are scenes where you have a bunch of people sitting at a table talking. They did some twirling camera moves around the actors and stuff like that. But I think I would have just loved it if. I think in the book, when Bill Denborough comes to the restaurant, everybody's already there. He's the last one there. And then he sees all the kid versions first. I would have loved for them to have played, because they did that. I once in a while showed like the flashbacks to the kids, but I would have liked it if they would have had all the kids sitting around the table for a second or two and then flipping over to the adult version. And I hope in the movie version these kids will be available, that they do flashback scenes. They're going to have I hope they just don't pull scenes from the first movie, but actually film new sequences with the kids morphing into their adult counterparts or something like that. So what more can we say about this? I'm trying to think of, we've talked about the acting, the special effects, and I even think for the era, I think that they're bad.
Yeah.
Like I've seen other things from that time period and maybe it's not fair again to compare movies to TV, and maybe it was just a crunch thing, but some of the special effects weren't that great.
You have to remember then, back in that time, there were really a difference between TV and movies.
Yes.
I mean, today it's basically no difference if you're watching a TV show or a movie. They have the same opportunity and the same special effects, and maybe sometime or maybe often the TV show actually have more money than the movie. So, but back in the 90s, TV shows often were cheaper and didn't have the same amount of money and didn't have the same special effects. So both that it's done 27 years ago and that it's TV movie or TV show doesn't speak for it. So that adds to the bad things.
Yeah, it's quite a contrast to see the difference in the speed of some of the scenes, like the boat scene, the paper boat scene at the beginning. Like if you watch a trailer and then you watch the TV version, the boat is going like 55 times faster in the movie trailer than it does in the TV show. He's basically walking beside it, and I do like how they took that moment when he walked around the workhorse, and in the movie trailer he actually runs into it, which is which is a nice let your guard down for a minute before the bad thing happens thing. So
and we have to talk about the ending as well.
Yes,
which happens pretty quickly, because I mean they do this dinner and then Mike is attacked and then basically they're down the sewers. So again, everything happens very, very fast, and they track it to its little home with a cozy little wooden door that they walk into. I thought about hobbits in the Rings when I saw that door. I was surprised. I almost expect them to knock on it.
Yeah, it's like, why would a spider build a door like that? But then they could always claim, well, they just imagined that it looked like that. So So I said, okay.
But it looks a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But then we see this big spider.
Yeah.
And cross-eyed, by the way, I think it was.
I'm sorry?
So he was cross-eyed? Is that what you call when you look?
Cross-eyed? The spider?
Yeah. Yeah.
He was? Okay, I didn't
I
notice.
think it was.
I didn't notice that.
He's more funny than scary, that spider.
Yeah, I mean that's and even with the new movie version, that's even you can make a realistic spider. I mean, like Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King had a really like Shelob was really well done, but I think that's a hard thing to sell in a story like this because it's so even though it's got all these weird things happening, everything that you're seeing is based on because it's based on the fears of the characters. It's things that we're all familiar with, like Wolfman and skeletons and whatnot. But all of a sudden, this spider just shows up at the end, and it's like I don't know how you sell that. I don't know. It doesn't matter how realistic you're going to make this thing look. I still think the whole concept of the spider being the it thing. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do there. I mean, like, and I still wonder if that creature that we see in the Dark Tower trailer is what the form of this it creature could be like, or the potential, because they always say that the it creatures from the Dark Tower mid-world universe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard selling point. I don't know.
And constantly throughout the movie, they mention that you couldn't bear seeing the real me, the real it. And I mean, it's a spider. Everybody can see a spider, so it takes the edge of it quite a bit. I mean, it's big and has flashing light on its belly, but I mean, basically, it's just a spider. So why wouldn't they be able to see that without going crazy? And so I think it's a flat ending.
Yeah, I mean the one thing, the sequence they did that wasn't too bad is the dead lights in the sewer pipe.
Yeah,
or the pipe. I don't know if it was a sewer pipe. I don't know why that pipe had all those holes in it. I guess it was just so you could see the lights. But it was that was a cool effect. But I don't like to be too negative, but because you have, like you said at the top, you have to take into consideration the time era and the platform on which this was done on, and they did the best they could do at the time. So I mean, I got a Ray Harryhausen vibe from the spider. It was a stop motion Jason and the Argonauts thing. Yeah. But I think you made a great point that the gap between what you could do on a short basis on a TV series back in the 90s and movies of that era, the gap between the two was very wide. And this proves it because we're seeing stuff now on TV because of CGI and whatnot. You can get some like what Game of Thrones did with their battle sequences over the last couple of seasons and what you see in some other science fiction shows. There's not that as near a great a gap, and sometimes it works even better on TV because you're so into the story that you don't notice it. So yeah, I'm just going to say, like you, the special effects, the main thing for me is it's at a level where it takes me out of the story, and that's the ruler that I use for whether or not they're up to snuff. And in this case, they're not. And probably the most rushed part of this miniseries was the actual ending, like where everybody just did to defeat the monster. I never really felt anything for Eddie's death. And then Annette, Bev Marsh and Ben drive off and get married, and I think they would stick around and try to help Bill with his wife or something like that. And then the whole, again, because they just, I don't know why they didn't use the playing cards. Like if they would have just, because they could have used that as a visual cue, and he's riding with his wife down the hill, and they could maybe start hearing the cards getting louder and louder as some sort of a cue that something's going on, something magical is happening, right? Where there's never any feeling of magic with him riding the bike, and that's the part that I miss the most in the miniseries, because when he says "Hi Ho Silver," there's like this. It's like he's riding Pegasus or something. You know what I mean? Like he's flying almost, or he's invincible, or whatever. You never get that feeling that this bike has magical properties or anything like that.
No, I definitely agree. It could have been done, or maybe it couldn't have been at that era, but today it could definitely be much better done. But I remember seeing this back when it was released, and I really enjoyed it by then. So I assume that if we go back 27 years and we watched this when it came out, we were pretty happy with it and would probably have given it a better rating than we do now. And that's just what happens with and especially movies and
when you get older.
Yeah. But I think also that often when you have stuff that's very heavily dependent on special effects, they aren't surviving the time as good as stuff that doesn't. I mean, movies done today will probably look pretty cheesy in say 30 years from now as well, and now we think it's state of the art and the best we have ever seen. So but I definitely would recommend people to watch this one, because it interesting watch, and Tim Curry is good as Pennywise. He's not as scary as one might believe if you read online that people could never see clowns again after seeing him. That's a little bit hard to understand right now, at least.
Yeah.
Might also have been very different in the 90s, but I would also recommend people to see this one before they see the new one, because I believe that the new one will be better both visually and plot-wise, and basically in every aspect. I think that one will be better. So I would recommend to watch this one before you see the new one.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because even like from the trailer, we can see for the movie that they're including sequences that were dropped from the book, whether that was for time reasons or for budget reasons. Like I mentioned earlier, I really hope the standpipe sequence is brought back in, and we know that the house on Neibolt Street is going to be in there, so we're going to get to see the leper. We assume we're going to get to see the something with the Paul Bunyan statue as well. So there's lots of things that you're going to watch the miniseries and say, wow, where's this piece? And it looks like, because the movie's just doing the kids and it's got 2.5 hours, that a lot of that dropped out stuff is going to be put back in. So that's the other thing. And I think it is a good idea to watch this before as well, because you want to be able to compare Tim Curry's performance of Pennywise and that version against what they're going to be doing with the movie version. And I think it'll be like the difference between the Jack Nicholson version, which was very good for its time of the Joker, and what we're going to get, what we got with Heath Ledger with The Dark Knight. And I think we're in the same scenario right now. It'll be interesting to compare what Tim Curry did as opposed to what we're going to get with the Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah, and I think that I expect us to get a very different formatting of the story, because with the new one, as far as I know, we are going to focus totally on the kids in the first movie, because we don't even know that the grown-up has been casted. So my guess is that this one will focus totally on the kids, and the next one will totally focus on the adults, but probably have some flashbacks to the kids. And this miniseries is very much going back and forth between the kids and the adults in pretty much all the time. And even though I think that a lot of those clips are actually really good for the story, because it puts them together quite nicely, I think. So that works. But I think that the way this new one is structured will be totally different from this one, and quite different from the book as well, I think, because in the book they are also going back and forth quite a lot. So if you compare that part, I guess this older version of it follows the book more than what the new one will do.
Yeah, structure-wise, definitely. Yeah.
So, but I definitely see this one before you see the new one, and you will have something to compare with, and you don't have to be as nitpicky as I am. I just tend to be that way when I read the book and watching the movie at the same time. And when you get these, obviously, I mean, if I hadn't read the book, I probably wouldn't have picked up on a lot of stuff. But when you read it and see it, and it basically in the same week, and those small things that really doesn't matter, why change them? I mean, you can change if you have a reason to change, but if it's just because you're lazy and can't count 27, then you don't get it in my book.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, when he said 30 years as well, like okay, they're just rounding it to make it easier for people to follow. But it's interesting to be going through this process right now, because and we might be wrong, but I don't think we are. We're assuming that the movie version of this is going to follow the book a lot more closely. So therefore, I feel comfortable right now rereading the novel and rewatching this miniseries, because I think it's an interesting comparison point. But a lot of people are now, because of the Dark Tower trailer, they're all saying, oh, should I read the books right now? And I would say to them, no, do not. If you have not read them yet, do not read them now, because all that is going to do is set you up for what you're talking about, like with the nitpicky things about the 30 years instead of 27, because that is such a different adaptation as a sequel, more of a sequel to the books than the actual books themselves. I think if you read the books right now, I think it's just going to make it more difficult for you to enjoy the movie for what it's trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
I also want to mention, too, that the Blu-ray version is framed in 4:3. So you get the square picture, which would restore the framing, the proper framing of the picture. And I'd be interested to pick that up, because I'd like to watch it again with the proper framing.
Did you have any extra material on your version?
Just a commentary.
Yeah.
Which I didn't listen to on both sides. And I believe it's with the three of the main actors. And, here it is. Dennis Christopher, Tim Reed, John Ritter, Richard Thomas, and director Tommy Lee Wallace. So, But from all accounts, from what I've heard, it's not that interesting. And it sounds like they actually took 3 different commentary tracks and spliced them together to make one running commentary throughout the whole miniseries. So.
Okay. Yeah, mine has, this is actually an older DVD, so here they actually list as extra material, interactive menus, and scene access.
Those are big features when DVDs first came out, right? Because you couldn't do that with video tapes.
So, and I skipped those. But as our recommendation is, watch this one and watch it before September 8th when the new one is out.
Definitely. It's definitely worth seeing. And one of the dangers of doing these overviews is you always dwell on the things that bother you more than the things that were good.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate that there are some good performances here.
There are.
Tragically, that he's gone so young as Jonathan Brandis, I think, as Bill Denbrough is quite good. I think that, where's he? Seth Green's Richie is pretty good.
Yeah.
I can't say beyond that. Like most of the other performances are competent. Richard Mauser as Stanley Uris, he's probably a bigger star movie-wise than the other actors are. And so it's interesting that he almost has more like a cameo because of what happens to his character. So it's always, and I did enjoy his scene with his head in the refrigerator.
Yes, I like that one as well.
that actually came off pretty good.
Yeah.
And seeing John Ritter, who's passed away so tragically and suddenly, is when I first see him, he's good. I like him as Ben. Unfortunately, I don't think the younger Ben, I thought he was stiff. But I mean, I think that's one of the things I worry about with the It movie still is, even though they look good in the trailer, but when you see these group of kids together, and then it's again, if it's of the era and the TV thing, getting one good child actor is tough enough, but to get 7, that's not easy. And I don't know how well that's going to play in the movie, but that's vital to what's going to happen with that movie. So hopefully, based on the trailer, though, I mean, even like Georgie in that trailer, he's fantastic compared to the Georgie, and just the way that he repeats that "You'll Float Too" line. He does it like 4 different ways, right? Like from humorous and he works his way up through the scale to getting really angry.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was surprised about that I hadn't mentioned was they don't really do the stutter for Bill too much in the miniseries either. And people were saying in the trailer that he doesn't stutter at all. So I'm wondering how much of stuttering he's going to do in the movie, because he didn't do a lot. And it was actually more of Richard Thomas doing it than Jonathan Brandis, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I think I have to admit that I don't really know anyone that stutter a lot, so I might be totally off here, but I thought that when grown-up Bill stuttered, it sounded quite fake.
Yeah.
And as I could be totally wrong here, because I don't know anyone who stutters, but it didn't felt genuine. It felt like something he created just then and there. Yeah. So that threw me off a little bit, and I was hoping that it wouldn't stutter as much as it did actually.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely worth watching. Just take in mind it's of its era, and if you saw it as a kid, you probably will love it still. I mean, I have that with the original Salem's Lot because I was just at the right age when that came out. So, I was like 10 or 12 or whatever it was. If you saw this miniseries when you were 10 or 12, I'm sure that you have very fond memories of it too. And hopefully our analysis of this hasn't put you off too much. But
no, I think that after all, we are recommending people to see it. So
yeah,
but we have to remember that if you haven't seen it and reading online about it, and definitely on Pennywise, you could easily think that he would be much, much more scary than he actually is. Mm-hmm. So be prepared for that.
Yeah. And if you're not as scared of clowns, that's also another handicap, because I'm not. So it doesn't really affect me on that level. But some other people are really freaked out by clowns.
Yeah.
Which I just find weird, but there you go.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So that was a good discussion, man.
Yes.
Jeez. Yeah.
And
good stuff.
That is it for this time. Mm-hmm. Please comment on this one, and definitely on what you think about the old version of it, and definitely what you think about our analysis of Pennywise. Do you agree? Do you not agree? What are your prediction about how we will feel about the new Pennywise and such? comments. We want to read them. We want to hear them. Use the speak pipe. We would love to have some comments to actually put in this podcast if possible.
Mm-hmm.
And for the next time, the next pod, we are going to take a look at Gwendy's Button Box by Stephen King and Richard Chesmar.
That's right. Should be interesting. Should be fun.
Yes, definitely. It's a good book. So make sure you read that until the next podcast is out, so you can listen to our thoughts and comments.
That's right. Thank you very much. And as usual, stay safe.
But
stay scared.
Yeah.
Boom. Sorry, was it your turn this time?
No.
Did you want to do it?
No, it works best when you do it, I think.
Oh, I don't know about that, but all right.
Okay.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. The end.
Bye-bye.